Good afternoon. So the essence of what I wanted to say, of course, I delivered it through the address during the opening ceremony. But there are a couple of things that perhaps would be worth repeating. One is that we at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa value profoundly this forum because it gives an opportunity to the continent to be heard on some of the issues that we are confronting, that we are being confronted with in the deployment of digital infrastructure and service on the continent. The first one is indeed that the digital divide is a feature on the continent. And it's a feature that is pronounced the most in the rural areas and increasingly so as a result of the crisis that we are faced with now. So the poor are getting less and less access to services. Because of the triple crisis, 55 million more Africans became poor. And if we do not invest into addressing the root causes of this process, we'll have more and more people that will be poor on the continent. So vulnerability is a major issue. And with that vulnerability increasing, it means more people will have less access to internet-based services. So this is a reality. At the same time, as I've indicated during my address, there are very interesting things happening on the continent, some of which we are facilitating. You've heard several times in the course of this forum of the African coding camps, of which currently we have 25,000 people or so, young girls and women trained. This effort needs to be expanded, need to be amplified for us to make a dent on the digital divide in our effort to bringing young girls and women into the mainstream. We are also happy to see that more and more governments are prioritizing investments in deploying the infrastructure that will enable the digital divide to be limited. But more of this needs to happen on the continent, again, for change to happen, transformational change to happen. We are happy to see that some of the institutions, the multilateral development banks, are investing in this effort. Africa 50, for example, is supporting the deployment of broadband and fiber optic on the continent, and so on and so forth. So these are the notes which I guess it's important to reiterate further. We see the African Continental Free Trade Area as an opportunity for the deployment of digital services. Some of the initiatives that we, together with the Afrexim Bank and other partners, deployed to respond to COVID crisis and also to the current crisis, demonstrate the potential of digital in enabling access to services, goods, and so on. So again, moving forward, we need to see more of this happening. One particular area of concern to us is, of course, the micro and small medium enterprises. How can we utilize digital to enable them to be part of the mainstream? If the informal sector represents about 70% of the Africa's economic fabric, they are not included now into the mainstream of the economic activity. Digital transformation and inclusive digital transformation can bridge that gap. So those are the notes which I wanted to start with in addressing you, the press. The pointers that I've enumerated earlier during the speech, I'm sure you have access to it. I can come back to some further details about we as ECA are doing, and we are particularly proud to have been part and parcel of the efforts to formulate the African Union digital transformation strategy. We are supporting the formulation of national digital transformation strategies, and this is an effort that needs again to be part of the ecosystems that we need to discuss during this forum to enable Africa to be part of the digital commons and not be forever locked into the digital divide spectrum section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro. Mr. Lee, you now have the floor.
Well, thank you, moderator. Good afternoon. My name is Lee. I'm the new UN Under Secretary General for the Economic and Social Affairs. It is a great pleasure to be with all of you today. I think you just witnessed the very successful conclusion of the opening ceremony. We heard a very inspiring statement from the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, and also Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed. As my colleague briefed you already, in the coming several days, there are more than 300 sessions touched upon a number of outstanding issues. But before I answer your specific question, let me just make a very general remarks about this IGF. I guess the first thing that I want to underline is our great thanks go to our great host, the government of the Ethiopia and the people of the Ethiopia. This is a great city. We are so proud and so pleased to see that IGF back to the African continent after 11 years. And second, our sincere thanks from the UN Secretariat goes to our distinguished colleagues from the ECA, with their outstanding support and collaboration, excellent collaboration with the host team and also the UN headquarters. We make this event as a reality. Then I just also want to share with you about this very unique nature of the IGF. I guess all the media friends note quite well, IGF is a very unique platform with multi-stakeholders from the government, from the parliament, from the academia, also from the business. Most importantly, we also bring the civil society. And we have that free, open, transparent, and candid discussion on all related issues, all issues related to the connectivity to the internet. So based on this discussion, deliberation, there will be some messages to be emerged from this IGF that we will call it Addis Ababa message. So after the end of this IGF, I guess friends from media, you may get a clearer picture about how significant the discussion, how important the recommendation from this IGF. And also that I just want to echo just now, Pedro said that we from the UN Secretariat, particularly from the UN DESA, we paid a special attention to African continent. As we witnessed a couple of days ago, more than 8 billion people now populated on the Earth, but out of which 2.7 billion people still have no access to the internet. But in Africa, over 60% of the population remains offline. So this brings me to the important role of the IGF in building a sustainable future and a digital empowerment in all parts of the world, particularly for the African continent. So we really hope that with the IGF held in Addis Ababa in African continent, more relevance, pertinence by the IGF to African digital transformation. Last but not least, I also hope that media colleagues would give more exposure to IGF because we want to see the discussion here, deliberation here, or the suggestion, recommendations that emerged from the discussion would also transmitted, will be heard by our people throughout your covering. And it also, they would help the government to make the relevant decision to make the difference for the lives of the ordinary people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. We now give the floor to Mr. Mola.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Such a pleasure that my country, Ethiopia, has been able to host this IGF forum. And I should say thank you to everyone, individuals, institutions that have been supporting us so that the IGF 2022 would be hosted in our city, Addis Ababa. So I should say thank you especially for senior people, senior officials who are here with us, Mr. Lee, Mr. Pedro, and all of you here. It is such a great pleasure and honor for me as Minister of Innovation and Technology of Ethiopia to welcome you all to this press conference. Such an honor and privilege for Ethiopia hosting the IGF Forum, which is a clear recognition of and an encouragement for Ethiopia to continue its effort towards adopting Internet for sustainable development. I would like to thank the IGF Secretariat, the IGF Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, MAG, and the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, and the UNESA to their effort to make the IGF 2022 such a success as we see it now. Ladies and gentlemen, the forum creates common understandings of the future of the Internet, especially such as values, principles, and rules. The most important value behind the Internet is openness and freedom. These principles are not sustaining by themselves. They must be nurtured and defended, and it is this phenomenon that makes the IGF a special important forum. The IGF 2022 is hosted under the overarching theme of Resilient Internet for a Shared, Sustainable and Common Future. The theme reflects the major issues surrounding the Internet and especially reflects on the concerns of the developing countries, including Ethiopia, which are yet to fully realize the benefit of the Internet to their citizens. This theme is not just a motto, it is a call for action. How should the Internet become resilient? And what are our common future? And how should the Internet contribute to ensure the sustainability of our common future? These questions must be answered and be sufficiently explained. The IGF 2022 discusses on these issues as it tries to explain and answer the pressing questions. Making Internet resilient and making it work for common future needs all our concerted efforts. All means the private sector, civil societies, scientific communities, governments in both developed and developing countries. And it is when all these stakeholders work harmoniously and together that the Internet become more resilient, and can contribute to solve our existing and future problems. Ladies and gentlemen, the last 3 years put together was a remarkable time for Ethiopia in using the digital technology to digitally provoke the sectors towards promoting sustainable development. Rolling out the Digital Ethiopia 2025 strategy and the liberalization of the telecom market are among the major measures the government has taken successfully towards furthering the digital transformation of the country. Though Ethiopia is yet to fully realize the benefit of the digital transformation, we believe it is on the right track. The internet users in Ethiopia have surpassed 30 million. Though this number is quite big as compared to the population of Ethiopia, which is around 120 million, we understand that there is much to work yet to ensure that every citizen has meaningful access to the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, hosting the IGF in Ethiopia is a good opportunity for policymakers and other stakeholders in Ethiopia to learn from the experiences of countries and understand the trends in the global internet governance. Since the implementation of the National Digital Transformation Strategy is in its early stage, we believe we'll be able to get proven ideas and experiences worth considering in our future endeavor to digitally transform the economy and the life of our people at large. We also believe that hosting the IGF in Ethiopia will increase the momentum of the digital transformation activities which are already started in the country. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the local organizing committee, members of the National and Steering Committee, Secretariat, and other supporters for their unreserved effort to make the IGF 2022 such a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Mala. We will now open the floor to questions. Please give your name and your media organization when asking a question. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. My name's Fred Hauser, and I report for the Times of London as a freelancer and other outlets. My question was for the Minister, Mr. Belete Mola. I wanted to ask, in light of the peace agreements that were signed in Pretoria earlier this month, can you tell us when internet is due to be restored to the Tigray region, and also about the impacts that the lack of internet in Tigray has had on people's lives there? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was a question anticipated, perhaps. As everyone knows, there was peace talk in 2 sessions in Pretoria and Nairobi just a few weeks back. That has brought hope to all of us Ethiopians and all of us, across the world, because, as you know, there has been war tormenting the lives of our people for the last 3 years. You know every reason behind the war, I hope, and I don't want to go into it. But in any case, what matters most is that now the Ethiopian government has courageously, of course, and daringly has taken a step towards solving this war through peace efforts. This takes courage if we understand the position of the Ethiopian government and people, if we understand the reasons why the war has begun. First of all, we would, and any sane person would appreciate the steps taken by the Ethiopian government. So now, after the peace talks, electricity facilities are under reconstruction in Tigray region. You should know this. And telecommunication services are kind of resumed in many places of Tigray. And next it will be the internet, not just the internet, but a lot more will be done by the Ethiopian government, because Tigray is part and parcel of the Ethiopian people. Tigrayans are our own brothers and sisters. Their pain is our pain. And it is understanding of this that the Ethiopian government has taken this step so that peacefully things will come back to normal. And with this, I should take this opportunity to call upon all actors of the world to please support the position of the Ethiopian government and to understand, I mean, our position. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please raise your hand if you have a question, because then someone will bring a mic to you. And also remember to give your name and your media organization. Thank you.
Thank you for the floor. My name is Avit Ndezigam from Burundi. I'm reporting for Radio Kacha from Burundi. My question goes to Lee. You state that now 60% of Africans are offline. Then what are the key or clear plans that the UN is putting in place to at least reduce the percentage to 30%? And then how long do you think this can be achievable? And my last question, what is the percent you think you will state next year in the IGF of Africans who are offline? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your question. This is quite a big question. I don't know whether or not the UN can map out a strategy to bring down the ratio for unconnected in the African continent. But I guess in our close collaboration with our African counterparts from AU, from the sub-regional organizations, most importantly from the governments of all the African member states, and it also was the close collaboration with our colleagues from the ECA, and we could work together to develop a sort of strategy to facilitate the African countries. Number two, I guess also from this IGF, you may hear different suggestions or recommendations, but for UN certainly we absolutely are very committed for we will say that a digital future. It's open, free, safe, and secured. But from DESA's perspective, we thought that if we say or we focus on the digital future, it actually are three key components. One is accessibility. Second is a functionality. Third is sustainability. So I know for the time being, over the 60% of the African population offline. We hope that with the joint efforts from the government, from the business sector, and also from the external partners, and also from civil society, we may build or invest more infrastructure, and it also to increase the digital literacy through the school, primary school to high school education. And then also we want to see the more participation from civil society to narrow down the gender inequality. And also we strongly encourage the multilateral development banks would focus more on the digital infrastructure in African continent, because this is the youngest continent. So more and more that I guess we will see how this be moved forward bit by bit, gradually through the joint efforts. But if you ask me whether or not by the next IGF we may see a remarkable reduction for the population unconnected in Africa, personally I would like to see this a magic figure, but it all depends on how joint efforts would move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Pedro would also like to add to this.
So I would like to complement what my colleague and the Secretary General Lee said. First, and I said it yesterday, that I was coming from the African Union Summit of Heads of State and Government. And the summit was held in Niger, in Niamey, and it was on accelerating Africa's industrialization and economic diversification. The heads of state and government have clearly identified digital transformation as key to achieving that massive industrialization and sustainable development of the continent. And so this is part of the way forward. I've equally said that things are happening on the continent. If you look at what was the situation a couple of years ago in terms of broadband and fiber optic deployment and what is it now, I think there's a significant change. But this is certainly not going to happen overnight. We will not have the 60% or so or more than the people that don't have access to internet services reduced to 30% by next year. But what is important and what we should recognize is that the importance of digital transformation to Africa's achievement of Africa's overall aspirational goals, as enshrined in Agenda 2063, has been clearly recognized, and governments are sort of stepping forward to achieving that. And we as the UN system are equally doing so. ECA in particular, I mean, we've been in this business, I mean, for many years. For example, we've supported your neighbor on the right-hand side, Rwanda, in the formulation of the NIKI, so the National ICT Policies, NIKI 1, 2, and 3. NIKI 1 was about providing the infrastructure base. NIKI 2 was about so NIKI 2 was about policies, and NIKI 3 was about content. For example, some of the things that we've done in the process was to create rural internet centers to enable, again, address the digital divide, the rural communities to have access to those services and so on. So these are happening across the continent. Globally, the Deputy Secretary General organized at the margins of the last UN General Assembly, the Global Africa Business Initiative, so Gabi. And Gabi was a major platform where private sector, captains of industries, governments, the UN entities, and other stakeholders were discussing how to make Africa transform structurally. And I mean, the theme was Unstoppable Africa, and digital transformation was identified as key to achieving that. The implementation of CFTA, again, as I said earlier, is digital centric. With the Afrexim Bank, we are enabling the deployment of all sorts of platforms to facilitating access to opportunities that are arising out of the implementation of the trade regimes of CFTA and so on. So from enabling countries to trade among themselves, to facilitating payment systems so that you can pay in your own currency in intra-African trade. The rate of intra-African trade now is about 16 to 19%, much lower than the rest of the world, which is about 60%. So that's a major sort of target moving forward, is to improve intra-African trade through facilitating some of those transactions. And this is where digital transformation sort of comes in. Basically to say, we are absolutely, hopefully, we have hope that coming perhaps in the next 5 years or so, the scenarios will be different. Private sector is interested. The value proposition of digital transformation is recognized by everyone. The youth is there, and the youth was identified as the key to implementing the outcomes of the Niamey Declaration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pedro. We have time for one more question before we conclude.
Thanks very much. I'm Brett Solomon from Access Now, the Access Now Express, and also a presenter on This Week in Cyberspace. I have a follow-up question on Tigray, if that's okay. Thanks very much for the information about the resumption of the internet. I'm interested in a timeline for Tigray, if there's any indicators that you could give us to the Minister, and also to the other speakers, to Mr. Pedro and Mr. Lee. Interested in your perspectives on internet shutdowns and also the resumption of the internet in Tigray.
Thank you. We let's hope that the other side will remain committed to the terms reached in the Pretoria session, especially, so that resuming life, not just the internet, full scale, everything, will not be a problem to the Ethiopian government. Trust me on this. But one thing you should note is that it is not only in Tigray that parts of Ethiopia, some parts of Ethiopia don't have internet. In places where the Tigray army advanced, there are so much distractions, and I want you to be a voice for that as well. So that, I mean, yeah. So in any case, the government of Ethiopia is designing a package that is not only about, like I said, internet resumption, but resumption of everything, because this is what we need as people, as government, yeah. So there is no timeline. It will follow the progress of things, you know. So far, like I said, electricity, telecom have been resumed in many places, and humanitarian access is opened up so that our people of Tigray is getting aid. In fact, the people and the government of Ethiopia is also giving to our people of Tigray what they need right at this time. So this effort will continue, but I also hope that the other side will be genuine enough and remain committed to implement the terms reached in the Pretoria and Nairobi sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pedro, if you can add to that, and after Mr. Lee can conclude.
Thank you. So we have a vested interest in the success of the IGF. I mean, we are part and parcel of that ecosystem, and we believe on the principles that inform the establishment of the IGF. And let me read a couple of statements that really are sort of part and parcel of how we carry ourselves with respect to your questions and all of those associated issues. First is that we see the IGF as indeed the platform for an open, freely accessible and interoperable deployment of internet services. And UNECA has supported the development of the Africa Data Governance Framework endorsed by the heads of state in February 2022, which gives the continent the governance framework to managing and addressing all of the issues that are key for the deployment of internet services. And inclusion, accessibility, free access to internet services are at the core of that governance framework. So, and we look forward to the deliberations during this week to try and advance the causes that inform the establishment of the IGF. And there are a couple of key messages that, with your permission, I think it's important for us to convey here. And so these are 9 or so, but I'll read them very, very fast. And you'll see that in those 9 messages, your question will be addressed. First is that we need to build resilient digital infrastructure, because this is critical for development. I've dwelt with that already. Reducing the digital divide is essential to building new pathways for rapid economic growth, innovation, job creation, and access to services in Africa. Harmonizing regulations to remove barriers to connectivity, both within African nations and across the continent, is crucial. And I would say globally, because there, I mean, today's and yesterday's were discussions about some of the issues that are indeed deepening that divide. So, and this is about regulations. For example, the European Union is taxing big tech. Can this become, I mean, something that is globally a global standard? our United Nations Secretary General has called for a global tax regime. Is this some of the things that should be part of the discussions during on the course of this forum, so that the gains that the big tech gain can be utilized through taxation to address, for example, the digital divides. Those are issues that are important moving forward. This will facilitate, again, the development of a more equitable and inclusive data and internet systems and ecosystems. Again, developing context-specific and fit-for-purpose interventions can eliminate inefficiencies and help establish public-private partnerships and a working national infrastructure. The implementation of digital technologies in Africa should progressively and continuously mirror the key principles, again I said, the key principles of inclusion, representation, and accessibility. And of course, private sector should be part of this. And this is a multi-stakeholder approach. So conversation, improving the quality of dialogue between the different stakeholders in the internet ecosystem is key, so that we can address some of these tensions that exist in the ecosystem. And digital cooperation, of course, is paramount globally and in Africa as well. And investing in human development and digital skills is absolutely critical. Now, we have the trust and confidence that the government of Ethiopia will be able to find solutions to the challenges as enumerated by His Excellency Minister Belete. So, and we are here as UN entities to support this. I mean, I was part and parcel of one of the briefings of the Deputy Prime Minister, where the Deputy Prime Minister indicated quite clearly that with the resumption of peace, the government is going to prioritize the deployment of services. We believe that this priority will be honored. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have much to add. The UN team, the always speak in the UN one voice. So Mr. Pedro said it represented the UN's position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we would conclude this briefing. Thanks to our special guests for the excellent briefing they have given. Thanks for joining. We just want to remind you to please follow all the sessions on the IGF YouTube channel. And there's a wealth of resources as well on the IGF website. We count on you to amplify the importance of the digital transformation as well as the role of the IGF in making this happen. Have a great week, everyone.